Hi, nice to be here with you guys. So anyways, yeah, so the previous company, or the company that was previously mentioned, is my 9 to 5 until we transition over to Future Tech Holdings. This is an entity specifically created solely for dealing with Filecoin. Something to keep in mind as you all are moving forward. It might have already been covered, I don't remember, but for my specific purposes and where I'm looking to take this, I set up an entity specifically for this, and that's what we've got with Future Tech Holdings. So in a nutshell, what I try to come up with a simple way to define to people really quick what this is. This entity and its purpose is really we're looking at being a technology firm specializing in enterprise level solutions. We're aiming to leverage enterprise technologies to provide more reliable and efficient data access at hyperscale. And last but not least, some of you have heard a lot of the green things being thrown into play here, but it's one of our primary objectives. To use green technologies, engaging with local communities, and helping these organizations, the communities, to adopt a sustainable mindset and bring in green technologies for their communities. Because it honestly seems like that's where we're going as a nation and in general. I think at the beginning it was more of like a fad, but we're seeing it grab more and more and more adoption, and I don't think it's something that's going away, especially as we see more and more of these crypto technologies, just consuming so much more power, and we're starting to see a lot more legislation kind of coming against. They don't like these heavy power, aggressive things. So green is a lot more acceptable when we're bringing new things to market, right? So I want to kind of frame this in more of like a story from past, present, and future. So I'm going to frame this from where how we got here, what we've done so far, and where we're looking to go next in the future. So, all right, so how we got here, that kind of starts with this guy who happens to be me. A little bit of backstory. So yeah, I'm a hacker. I was that kid that was like, 5 years old writing software and doing stupid stuff you probably shouldn't be doing, which honestly turned out to be a pretty good blessing because, moving forward, it kind of brought me into this space. I'm sure some of you can kind of relate to that, and just being those tinkering guys that just like to explore, right? So that really kind of helped. So I happen to be one of those guys that has been a part of several startups. So not the first time coming into a startup. Probably my first company was when I was 18 years old. So done a lot of that, seen a lot of interesting things here and there. We've had some federally grant funded things, and actually even crypto projects that I've been involved in that I'm not going to mention here because I think this is going to be publicly saved, and I don't really want to put too much stuff out there. So next, so enterprise grade technology. I don't know what it was with a combination of just things I was tinkering with and some of the opportunities, but I've been playing with enterprise specific grade hardware for nearly 30 years. I'm actually probably a little bit older than I look, which I'm happy for. But yeah, that's actually come in handy, especially with dealing with Filecoin, because I'm sure a lot of you have realized this isn't, hey, I'm going to stand up a little tower and I'm good to go. So next. I've actually been doing crypto since about 2010. On the miner side, also doing full stack development with code, not only with the chain technologies, but actually providing services and creating crypto exchanges, all kinds of wild stuff. I'm happy to share some of those crazy stories sometime. I will say one time I didn't expect that I'd be calling FBI Federal Major Crimes Division at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So that was a very interesting time. So let's see, what do we got next? All right, and then emerging technologies. So I've always been drawn to this concept of saying, all right, what's new that's out there that actually has a chance of succeeding? There's a lot of cool things that are out there, a lot of gimmicky things. I think that even in this space in crypto, there are so many different projects going around. It's easy to get caught up in things that aren't really viable, or they sound good on paper, or they're just very, very hypey and gamey. So it's been very helpful to look at this from the lens of saying, what kind of projects am I going to get involved that looks like it's actually going to be successful and actually succeed? And there are very few projects I've seen in the entire crypto ecosystem that have some of these key components I've seen, or that I'm looking for, and Filecoin happens to be one of those. So when we aggregate all this stuff together, that's kind of where we have set the stage for us getting involved in Filecoin itself. And all of these have really helped to build that template for being successful. So I know this is a lot more heavy on the maybe technical side and kind of operational type things, but you definitely want to go into this finding people that are strong in the business side and also strong on the tech side. If you're trying to be a Rambo and trying to do this yourself, you're going to be in for a lot of pain. So what we've done, all right, so first out of the gate, research, so much research. So if you had seen what I mentioned on the first slide about hyperscale, I'm always looking in from the standpoint of saying the cookie cutter model. If you've ever heard that in a business, if you can make something simple and repeatable, you want to do that and just rip through it, and then now you can amplify that and magnify that out. I'm trying to take the same approach with Filecoin to look at it. So how can we rapidly use the term hyperscale out if need be from a flex standpoint? So because of that, we've spent a lot of time doing research, finding out how can we take some of the information that the Filecoin community has already been presenting and doing, and then merge that together to take things to another level. Because our goal is actually to get to, our first goal is to get to about 100 PIBs. That's a pretty good milestone, and then we'll see where we kind of go from there. We joined mainnet in 2022 of March. We currently have our information in a class 3+ data center, as they like to call it. Technically, there is no such thing as like a 3+ data center, but they have gone so far and done some extra due diligence for some of their other clients like Microsoft and whatnot, that we just kind of reap some of those benefits, and they're just like, yeah, we got a great data center, so we're like, yeah, sure. So because of that, we're in Detroit because of some of the other industries. There's a pretty solid core internet there. We're able to peer with a lot of local tenants in areas and actually other areas. So we also have Phil Plus data on chain, which we're really moving at a kind of a rapid pace here, at least I think by my standards, especially since we just joined in March and we were part of the first cohort in July. So we're trying to move along quick. So we want to do research, but we also want to be making forward progress too. Because if we're not doing anything, that's just you need to take steps no matter what you're doing. As mentioned, part of ESPA 3 cohort and sustainability. So one of our, we've already picked out a site that we're looking at standing up a green facility that has the ability to be off-grid 24/7, 365 days a year, which to me I think is pretty cool for a couple reasons. First, that means we're not really dependent on the grid. We don't have to worry about backup generators and fuel and all these other overhead costs. But second, that means we don't have to pay the power companies and all these other extra overheads that, if you've ever been in crypto long, those numbers can add up quick. So. Oh yes, and then also as we're going on, we've been looking at figuring out how do we engage with other partners, other people that can bring their skill sets to the table to amplify ours, engaging with some of these other sectors and whatnot. Because I think a lot of us are either techie people or maybe businessy, but a lot of the people haven't really figured out how do I how do I accelerate the inbound rate of data growth? I've heard a lot of conversations where people talk about, hey, well, just give me data. I'm just going to peer with other Filecoin service providers, but nobody's really talking about, hey, me as a service provider, how am I going to bring more data directly into the ecosystem? So that's what we're looking at from this point, from testing those waters to figure out what is the easiest way or what makes the most sense from a partnership standpoint to help us leverage that, because our team is highly on the tech side, right? Not so much on the sales and marketing side. So that's how we're kind of adapting, for our current conditions. So where we're going. First goal, 100 PIB Phil Plus data. So that's actually would be, I guess, the equivalent of, not 10 PIB raw, but that actually that's 100 PIB raw, which is what, an exhibit? Yes. Yeah, thank you. So that's an exhibit. That's actually our first goal for this. So I forget, some people thinking in raw capacity, some people are thinking amplified. So yeah, that's actually 100 pib raw, 1 exabit amplified, right? Second goal that we're looking at is getting our green data center launched and ready to go. These are our first 2 goals that I see. Originally, I had looked at trying to do the green center sooner, but I realized from an economic balance standpoint, it doesn't make sense to stand up a data center immediately. I mean, unless you've got some kind of grant funding that's going to pay for it out of the pocket, it doesn't make sense because you're adding more CapEx and operational expenses to your business plan that you don't need out of the gate. Until you fill a certain number of racks, it just doesn't make sense to bring in that extra overhead and operational cost. So that's kind of why we kind of shifted things down a little bit. From there, we're still looking at that concept of hyperscaling of infrastructure. So we don't really want to kind of build 1 or 2 boxes and just kind of keep adding these extra boxes that make maintenance more chaotic. We want to orchestrate this so we can really scale out. If suddenly, it's going to take a lot of computing power to seal the amount of data we're talking about, right? Once that's sealed, we're going to have all this excess capacity. So I don't want this just sitting powered on. So we're looking at ways that we can use that in other methods. If we can use it, I think there's couple other projects that are coming down the pipeline using Filecoin to use extra compute power. I think it's what Backelhaus. Yeah, Backelhaus, and there's a couple other projects that are trying to figure out what to do with this excess computing power that's left over afterwards, and also figure out how do we power it down and all that kind of stuff, fun, nerdy stuff. So also multiple market sectors. So we also have the advantage of having tie-ins with about 4 or 5 different unique, diverse market sectors. So we're looking at figuring out how do we then leverage those independently, so we're not necessarily dependent on one sector. We really kind of want to diversify, but we do have connections in these spaces, so we're not building from scratch. Something else probably to keep in mind as you're building your teams and going forward, if you choose to pursue that sales and marketing route, bringing in new data, can you bring in talent or find people that have experience in these different sectors so you're not trailblazing and building new inroads from scratch. And also something that more recently came to light in the past, but we had some conversations last night that kind of came to mind that, all right, well, we're building this green data center. Our costs and overhead are going to be lower because we're not, pushing money and stuff out the door to electric companies. So I was thinking, hey, you know what? We're in a good geolocation. We've got a solid infrastructure that we're building up. We can provide space to other storage providers at a much lower cost than they would traditionally need if they were to go to someplace else. I do find it's kind of interesting that a lot of storage providers are talking about, we're building our own data centers, we're building our own data centers. So I'm kind of interested to see how this is going to kind of play out long term, whether people kind of have starry-eyed dreams thinking of how things are going to play out, or if we end up with every single storage provider having their own data center. This will be interesting to see how the ecosystem adapts and evolves here. So, kind of from like a last standpoint, I wanted to give you a feeling of what we're looking for to help ourselves accelerate and grow on our journey. So from an investor standpoint, we're looking for those people that have a lot of good experience on that sales and marketing side. We recognize that that would really help us accelerate and kind of take things to the next level. Also, people that are interested or have experience working with green technology, but more from also helping to architect and design it. Those that are familiar with different types of technologies and who know how to implement that. So we're not talking about, hey, Joe Blow just built a solar panel grid in his backyard. We're looking to doing things kind of at the industrial scale. So if you know anybody, I would love to chat with you. Also experience. Yeah? Awesome. All right. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. So spoiler alert, what we're using is not solar. So yeah. Spoiler. That's all right, so also people that have experience working with the government space. If you've ever worked with the government, you know it's a completely different beast than commercial space, even nonprofits. So we're looking for people who actually even have a passion working with local state governments, familiar with contracts, and actually even building those relationships, because it truly is a full-time job when you kind of get into this relationship component. And that is it. So right now, if you need to get a hold of me, the easiest ways to do is using my email address. So feel free to use this. I'm also on the Slack channel. You can ping me by my name there. And that concludes my presentation.